I would like to welcome everyone to today's Philadelphia City Council's Special Committee on Gun Violence Prevention, specifically addressing the issue of support services for victims, co-victims, and survivors of gun violence. I want to take a moment and thank all of my colleagues for attending this hearing today. I want to take a moment to acknowledge our Majority Leader, Councilwoman Sherelle Parker. I want to acknowledge Councilwoman Catherine Gilmore Richardson. I want to acknowledge Councilwoman Kendra Brooks. I want to acknowledge Councilman Alan Dom. I want to acknowledge Councilman Isaiah Thomas. I want to acknowledge Councilwoman Cindy Bass and also Councilman Derek Green. Thank you for taking time out of your schedule and for being here. Not the least, I want to take a moment to acknowledge the leader of our body, who also provided support and the legislation necessary in giving me the opportunity to singly focus on this issue of gun violence in this body, Council President Darrell Clark. Can you please give my colleagues just a round of applause for their dedication and taking time out of your schedule and being here today. Back in 2017, Council President Darrell Clark, Councilman Curtis Jones, and myself introduced a resolution authorizing the creation of this special committee on gun violence prevention to convene research and leaders from sectors including government, law enforcement, public health, social services, and most importantly, the community to examine the issue and come up with recommendations and a strategy to address gun violence prevention. I'm proud to say that since then we have worked with the Kennedy administration to establish the growth of the Office of Violence Prevention, which is one of the largest and best resources in the nation. I'm also proud to say that I have led the effort with my colleagues and our mayor to prioritize funding for violence prevention and its response. In this fiscal year alone, we have made $12 million new dollars available for violence prevention. Those funds are paying for crisis intervention teams, social services, job placement, and a new data and intelligence staff for the Philadelphia Police Department, as well as support for license and inspections to address quality of life issues in our neighborhoods. I'm especially proud to support the millions of dollars in grants to what we call boots on the ground organizations that are out there day in and day out addressing the issue of gun violence. The main purpose of today's hearing is to examine the effects of Philadelphia gun violence, specifically on victims, co-victims, and survivors of gun violence. This hearing will give victims of gun violence the chance to voice their concerns, examine what violence programs for victims and co-victims we are working on, and most importantly, provide them a voice and recommendations to address this issue that's plaguing our city. Last month in January, I held a meeting with leadership from across the city of Philadelphia government to get an update on the crime and violence impacting our city and to discuss future opportunities for agencies to work together in addressing the issue of gun violence. Last week, I had another meeting here in the City Council caucus room with victim advocacy groups as well as activists, mothers, brothers, sisters, and ordinary Philadelphians who has lost friends and loved ones to gun violence. This must change. As chairman of the Special Committee on Gun Violence Prevention, I am making it my personal commitment, which I've already had throughout my life, to make victims, co-victims, survivors of gun violence the most important seat at the table as we address this issue. Most of you may or may not know that in 1998, I established a program called Peace Not Guns after a cousin of mine was murdered in the streets of South Philadelphia. And so as a result of his life being taken, I dedicated my life through my organization, Peace Not Guns, of teaching young people conflict resolution, anger management, and anti-street education. So for me, this issue is personal and it's not about politics. Gun violence is a persistent growing threat to the safety and well-being of communities throughout Philadelphia and in America. As of February the 19th, 51 people have been the victims of homicides in Philadelphia so far this year, a 21% increase compared to the same time in 2019, according to statistics from the Philadelphia Police Department. In 2019, Philadelphia recorded 355 homicides. That total marked the highest homicide count in over a decade. Almost all those homicides were committed with firearms. People of color, most mostly African American youth are disproportionately likely to be victims or co-victims of gun violence. In addition to those being murdered in our city, there were also more than 1,400 non-fatal shootings in the city of Philadelphia. The victims of violence often suffer long-term disability, including paralysis, organ malfunction, and chronic pain. I want to thank the new Philadelphia Police Commissioner, Danielle Outlaw, for taking time out of her schedule and being here today to testify. I want to personally welcome you to the city of Philadelphia. But also, most importantly, we are one of the cities of first, and so I want everyone to take a moment to give her a round of applause to be the first African-American woman to be appointed to this position. We want to thank and acknowledge our mayor, Jim Kenney, for making the bold decision to appoint an African-American woman in this position. And Commissioner Outlaw, we're going to work with you to address this issue of gun violence here in the city of Philadelphia. And most people in this room know me and know my philosophy. It's not going to take one person to address this issue. It's going to take all of us as a city to roll up our sleeves to reduce the level of gun violence that we are seeing. Commissioner Outlaw is now 2 weeks leading into your police department, the fourth largest police department in the nation. I also want to congratulate you again for being the first African American to lead this department as a woman.